This is Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
I'm the only lawyer ever to obtain a court ruling that a president of the United States committed a crime.
For truth. For competition.
As a young lawyer, I helped break up AT&T. That's why you have all your cell phones today.
For sovereignty. For the Republic.
I'm the guy who at Judicial Watch, which I founded, uncovered the Chinagate scandal. Millions of dollars going to the Clinton campaign, corrupting our political system.
For the privacy of citizens.
And I'm the only guy to have enjoined the National Security Agency from mass surveillance on hundreds of millions of Americans.
Tearing it up.
I'm the son of meatpackers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
Bringing it back.
We're going to take this country apart and put it back together again in the way envisioned by our founding fathers.
It's not just talk.
We're not just regurgitating news stories. Larry Klayman, special prosecutor, is making the news.
And now, here's Larry.
Welcome to this week's edition of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. The country and the world is coming unglued. It already is unglued. We're in a Bolshevik revolution. There's no doubt about it. Radical leftists, radical blacks, radicals of the Jewish left, radical Muslims, radical feminists, radical atheists, you name it. Radical LGBTQ. I always have a hard time pronouncing that. Maybe that's intentional on the part that people that name them that way. I don't know. I'm just making a joke, but this is no joking matter, is that there is an attempt to destroy the vision and creation of our founding fathers. We see it mounting every single day. Violence in the streets, looting, burning, stealing, maiming, and even killing. We see it in all of our major cities. And we see the local mayors and the governors sitting back watching it happen. And we see a presidential candidate and his vice presidential candidate, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, respectively, saying nothing about what's going on because they covet what they think is the black African American vote. But they're wrong because African Americans know what's going on. In many ways, they're smarter than whites. They're street smart because they've lived a more difficult life. But those who are willing to work hard and were willing to tough it out and respect their own race are standing up to this. And we have Dimitri Penny on later in the show, a brave African-American policeman in Dallas, Texas, who was part of that victim of the massacre in Dallas in July of 2016. He authorized me, we became brothers, to file a case for him against Black Lives Matter, against the New Black Panthers Party, Al Sharpton, Louis Farrakhan, the whole lot of them, for inciting violence resulting in the death of cops and resulting in him being assaulted during that massacre. This is what we have done. We've taken action. So when we hear the RNC, when we hear the president, we hear everybody else this week producing what is in effect a giant Willie Horton ad, okay? You might remember who Willie Horton was. Going back to the election of George Bush the dad, Willie Horton was an African-American in Boston. He wore dreadlocks. He looked very frightening, very unkempt, and Mike Dukakis, who was running against George Bush the dad, let him out of prison, and they wound up killing somebody. And the Republicans used that to elect George W. Bush. Well, right now, they're doing the same thing, but it's justified because what we're doing right now is talking about the future of this country. And you cannot have people looting and destroying, carrying on, who were provoked by these radical black groups and other leftist groups for their own purposes. It's not just a question of racial justice. It's a question of destroying the entire fabric of our republic, overthrowing it. It's a Bolshevik revolution. It's just beginning. It's going to get worse, and it is getting worse every day, from Kenosha, Wisconsin, to Minneapolis, Minnesota, to Washington, D.C., where even Senator Rand Paul was attacked last night, leaving the White House, to Los Angeles, California, to Philadelphia, which has become the #2 murder capital of this country, my native city of Philadelphia, where I brought a case. We're going to talk about that later on behalf of the police. It's a crucial matter which is destroying this country. So we heard the right words from the Republicans this week and from the president, but we want to see action. Don't just play political games. Don't just say, well, Biden supports this, Harris supports this, vote for us, we believe in law and order. We want to see massive law and order right now. The president has the ability to nationalize the local police, at least in an emergency, which we're in. Okay, and that was the justification for doing the RNC convention from the White House. He couldn't do it in Florida. He couldn't do it in North Carolina, so he used the White House. Democrats, of course, complain about that because it's a great backdrop. But you know what? This president has been so maligned and so subjected to criminal activity by the Democrats and by the deep state that, frankly, the ends justify the means right now. It's not a big deal. It's form over substance. But this is what we have to fight. And the president needs to play a role. Now, Freedom Watch is doing it. We are taking action on behalf of the police. I formed a new group with Sheriff Joe Arpaio, which we're going to announce formally next week, called America's Sheriff, which is separate. It's an independent group, but it's going to work in tandem with Freedom Watch to protect and further the interests of law enforcement. I was a Justice Department lawyer. I'm law enforcement, too. As head of Freedom Watch, and before that, as head of Judicial Watch, I'm law enforcement, too. I get death threats all the time. I'm at risk. In my office, I don't even have on the marquee downstairs what office I'm in for fear of somebody's going to come up and shoot me. Okay, so this is the country that we're living in right now. We need to exercise our Second Amendment rights. We need to get ready for self-defense. Freedom Watch has a new American militia, which is defensive, not offensive. There's nothing wrong with militias. It's in the Second Amendment. It's our God-given right to have militias and to bear arms. And we need to man up. But the fact is that I want to see some action out of these Republicans because they've just played games with the American people for years. They said they were going to abolish Obamacare. No, it's not abolished. It's still there. They said they were going to take action against China for COVID-19, the president included. No action. All they did was shut down a consulate in Houston, Texas. We're taking action in our citizens class actions in Dallas, Texas, and Jerusalem, Israel. Go to freedomwatchusa.org. See if you qualify. We have many other cases where we are your Justice Department because our Attorney General does zip. And now, of course, we have a situation where there's a march on Washington last Friday. It's hardly the equivalent of what Martin Luther King did 50-some years ago. These people are not of his caliber. I was just watching last Friday, and I saw the son of John Lewis. John Lewis did some good things in the early part of his career, but by the end, he became a racist against whites. These people hate white people. They hate us. And we should not hate them. But we need to educate the American people as well as institute law enforcement. You've got major sports leagues, the NBA, which paints Black Lives Matter on its floors and lets the players put anything they want on their jerseys in disrespect. We got the NFL, which condones kneeling and now has two national anthems, one for black people and one for everybody else. We've got Major League Baseball doing the same thing. And even this week, the PGA Tour is bowing down to these white racists that are taking the position that they can do whatever they want. They can destroy, they can loot. Just a few weeks ago in Beverly Hills, California, they were in neighborhoods on people's lawns with shirts saying, "Eat the rich." That means kill the rich, kill white people. That's what it's about. We're all equal. And what they're doing, they're creating a recruiting tool. And this is really frightening for the Ku Klux Klan and for other radical groups. And there's going to be counter bloodshed. We saw that in Kenosha, Wisconsin already. Now, the kid was provoked in all likelihood, but he was well armed. He knew what he was up against. I'm not in any way saying he's guilty or innocent. I don't know. The facts haven't come out. And we just learned this week that George Floyd didn't die of asphyxiation by having a knee put on his head. He died because he had a fatal dose of fentanyl in his system. They'll never convict those cops if it's a fair legal trial. Of course, it won't be in Minneapolis, Minnesota. But the cops did wrong. They did criminally assault George Floyd, but they didn't actually result in his death. We never get the truth. We never get the truth. We never get the truth that crime per capita is much greater in the black community than in the white community. So we should let everybody out of prison and have more crime? I don't care if you're letting out black or white, yellow, green, or blue. If you commit a crime, you do the time. That goes for Roger Stone, too. The president let him off the hook. That wasn't right. Is that we all need to be held accountable for what we do. And that's why you have a Freedom Watch. And that's why we bring these hard-hitting cases. That's why we have citizens' grand juries. We have an attorney general who won't prosecute any of the criminals in Washington, D.C., whether it's James Comey, whether it's Andrew McCabe, whether it's the Lovebirds, Strzok and Page, whether it's Brennan, Clapper, Obama's, the Clintons, or Biden and his son who shook down the Ukraine. And there are Republicans that need to be prosecuted too. But, hey, they all protect each other. So we, the American people, need to rise up. We need to wage a second American revolution. It was Thomas Jefferson who said, and, this is why you got to go out and get my new book. It takes a revolution, forget the scandal industry. It's a play on Hillary Clinton's It Takes a Village. We don't need It Takes a Village. We need village people like us to peacefully and legally wage a counter-revolution against these Bolsheviks and to save the vision and conception of our founding fathers. You can pre-order it on Amazon.com, on BarnesandNoble.com, on BooksAMillion.com, on Borders.com. It's coming out in October, but get your copy now because they're going to go fast. It's not like the book that Hannity wrote, which basically regurgitates his monologue, which he's selling all over Fox News, and the president's even selling it for him. And that's frankly questionable to be pumping money into Hannity or Hannity pumping money into the president. But the reality is this, is that we need to do it for ourselves. So I want you to go out and read that book. And I've got concrete solutions. I don't say like Hannity, just vote for Trump. Yes, Larry Klayman personally wants Trump to win. Yes, I support him. We've in effect been his law firm now for 4 years, unappreciated law firm. We take a lot of actions on his behalf, and I've probably been kept away from him by Roger Stone, who's one of the worst people, frankly, in the entire nation. So this is somebody who really doesn't understand what's going on. We need to educate. We need to educate the sports leagues who are bending over, the industrialists, the white people are running for the exits. They're getting down, begging for forgiveness, head in a crouch. We need to rise up. Everybody needs to be respected. Everybody should respect themselves. And you'll listen to Dimitri Penny later on in this show. He's going to tell you what it's all about. I'll be right back with the second segment of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman.
Dangerous.
You don't hear, use the court and the law.
Lethal.
This is bad.
Special Prosecutor
Very bad.
Larry Klayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
It also works in reverse, okay? Is that certainly we support police power, we support law and order, we support justice, but it can be abused. And it can be abused not just to African American, and it has been, but it's been abused to every group. And I'm talking also about my clients, the Bundys. The Bundys are Mormons, the Latter-day of Saints. And they, of course, were subjected to brutal government tyranny, police power to seize their land. So Harry Reid, that corrupt, mafia-connected senator from Las Vegas, Nevada, of course, he's no longer senator, but he's still pulling the strings, could sell the land out to the Chinese, as it was reported, and undoubtedly getting kickbacks for the sale. And, of course, it was the federal government under the Obama's Justice Department who tried to set the Bundys up, who sent sharpshooters out there, snipers, who tased his sons, ground their faces in the dirt, killed their cattle, assaulted Cliven's sister, threw her to the ground, Margaret. Ultimately, the government trumped up charges, indicted the Bundys, indicted peaceful protesters who were exercising their Second Amendment rights and rights of protest. And by the grace of God, we were able to expose the corruption, the prosecutors in the Obama Justice Department lying, suborning perjury, hiding evidence that was exculpatory, and a whistleblower even came forward from BLM, Bureau of Land Management, who was responsible for this outrage along with the Justice Department under Obama, and exposed that there was a kill list on the heads of the Bundys, and their Mormon religion was being disparaged. They were being called subhuman, those kinds of things. So even an Obama judge, frankly, an evil judge who wanted the Bundys in prison, did everything she could to do it, had to dismiss the indictment to save her own skin, because she would have gone down with the ship with the corrupt Obama Justice Department. And what happened after that? It was Attorney General Jeff Sessions at the time, and later Bill Barr, who allowed the U.S. Attorney, which is part of the Justice Department in Las Vegas, Nevada, to appeal the case. Can you believe that? And we had to go through all of that. And just a few weeks ago, we won in a 58-page decision by a judge who wasn't even friendly, a friend of Obama, the lower court judge, Gloria Navarro, said that there was gross prosecutorial abuse. Now, I'm going to be asking Barr to conduct a real investigation. I requested one, and have these prosecutors and those in the FBI and BLM prosecuted and, of course, removed from the Justice Department and BLM. But don't hold your breath, because the establishment in Washington protects their own. Doesn't matter whether you're Democrat or Republican, because there by the grace of God go thee. And if you push too hard, then it's going to be pushed back on you someday. And that's why you see that this worthless attorney general by the name of Bill Barr looks like 100 pounds in a 50-pound bag, frankly. Blowhard. I call him Blowhard Bill, Puxatawny Phil, because that's the groundhog from Pennsylvania that runs back in its hole generally every February 2nd, that he lacks courage and doesn't do anything. And that's why you need to support Freedom Watch, because we do today what I used to do at Judicial Watch, hard-hitting cases. Judicial Watch mainly just gets documents under Fitton because he's not a lawyer. But we're bringing hard-hitting cases, citizens' grand juries. And I'm also writing because we need to educate. I write my own books. I don't have ghost people write it like Hannity did or other people did out there. I write it myself. It comes from my heart. So I want you to go out and pre-order a copy of It Takes a Revolution. Forget the scandal industry. Forget Fox News. Forget the other cables. Turn them off. Get up off the couch. Join our Justice League or do some other cause, worthy cause, but be activists. You see, the left is very activist, but we're sitting around taking punches. We on the right. And we need to now push back. And that's what our founding fathers did. That's what Jefferson did. That's what Franklin. They didn't sit there and wait for things to happen. And that's the message. And that's what you've got to do. And the Bundys didn't either. They defended themselves. And that's what we have to do in today's world, because if you don't defend yourself, God's not going to be there to help us. He is there to help us. We will prevail with his grace, but God helps those that help themselves. I've been saying that over and over and over again. And do not count on the Republicans and what they said at their convention this week. That was couched to get them reelected, to get them to retain the Senate, hopefully take over the House, and to get the president in office. Now, I love the president, but he's got to man up. Words are one thing. Deeds are another thing. Now it's time to act before the country goes down the drain. I'm going to be right back with Dimitri Penny, a tremendous patriot. Listen carefully to what he has to say. And I want you to go to his website. He's running for Congress in my personal capacity. I endorse him. It's Penny, Pennie, for Congress.com. And support Dimitri Penny. You'll see why you need to support him. We'll be right back.
And now, 4 words that make corrupt politicians make wee-wee in their little pants.
Transparency and the rule of law will be the touchstones of this presidency.
But we have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
Be the one who makes our country great again. Go to freedomwatchusa.org and donate.
I'm back with Dimitri Penny, my brother, my friend, my client, a Dallas police officer who was caught in the attacks of July 2016, the massacre. He brought a lawsuit. I filed it on his behalf in the Northern District of Texas against Black Lives Matter, against the New Black Panthers Party, Al Sharpton, Jesse Jackson, Barack Obama. Yes, Barack Obama. All of them, all of the race baiters have been whipping up hatred between the races over these last many years and causing the death of police officers. And now it's reached a critical mass. We see the violence every day in the streets. We see a march on Washington today, which is hardly the equivalent of what Martin Luther King did many, many years ago. I believe it was 57 years ago. These people are not in it the same way as Martin Luther King, peacefully and legally. And frankly, there's been violence in D.C. Dimitri's going to talk about that right off the bat. And Senator Rand Paul, and frankly, I'm no fan of Senator Rand Paul. I've he's a hypocrite. I've dealt with him before, but you don't want to see the guy attacked. He was attacked last night, and the police could barely fend off the attackers. Dimitri, give us your thoughts on this, given your experience in Dallas, Texas, given the fact that you're running for Congress now. I hope that you win. I support you personally. And tell us your take, because you come at it from a unique perspective. You're not only a policeman, you're African-American, but you also have a PhD. And you're extremely bright and intelligent. And give us your thoughts. You're a doer, by the way. You know, unlike some others out there like Sheriff David Clark, ex-sheriff, who talks, you actually act. So tell the listeners, tell our followers, tell fellow patriots what's going on and how you might propose dealing with it.
Yeah, so thank you so much for having me on, Larry. Look, right now we're at a critical point in American politics. Unfortunately, American in the United States is a part of this big social experiment that's being and propped up by the social media platforms. These groups, these Antifa leftist groups, are co-opting movements in the United States, and they're using them to attack American interests. The problem with where we are right now in this country is that law enforcement has to play by the rules. These guys, they can't just go out and because of a radical use a certain level of force against them, they can't just randomly respond and start shooting. It doesn't work that way. So because the radicals know this, because they know that law enforcement can't respond to the same level of force that they're using, because and it's not. Look, we got to make sure that we are qualifying these deadly force encounters. When an officer is faced with deadly force, I saw last night in D.C. an officer got hit in the head with a steel pan or something. That was a deadly force encounter. Now, these officers should be authorized in using deadly force. But what's happening, because this has become so political, these political leaders have instructed these officers not to respond with deadly force. In many cases, a lot of the political police leaders have even informed their officers that they can't even use less than lethal force. So officers are walking out here, and they're just human targets. They're just going out to be pummeled by the mob. And what I'm proposing, realistically, from a political side, I'm saying now it's time for the United States government to crack down on these radical leftist groups and to go ahead and put forth a comprehensive domestic terrorism policy, a policy where these individuals can not only be prosecuted, but these officers can be protected in using and meeting the level of force that they're being met with on these radicalized protests. The United States has to be able to protect its interests, and we cannot do it if the United States will continue to allow our law enforcement professionals to be beat up, to be demonized, and to be hurt by the radicals that want to do them harm. We have to do more, Larry.
That's an excellent point, Dimitri, and that's what I've been saying, is that, words are one thing. We listened to the Republican National Convention. It was very well crafted. I liked what I heard. But given the history of the Republican Party and the establishment in Washington, D.C., the past is a prologue. It's unlikely that strong action will be taken. Now, they've stepped it up a little bit in the last week or so, but not enough. And as I've been saying over and over again, it's not enough for the president, who I support personally, will vote for, and hope that he wins, because if he doesn't, we're going to have massive violence in this country one way or the other. It's going to get worse. But he's actually got to do something. He's got to step up to the plate. He can actually nationalize the local police. He can override the governors. He can override the mayors. He doesn't need the National Guard. And he can take action. And this is what he needs to do. But right now, what we heard at the Republican National Convention, and you may not be old enough to remember this, was a giant Willie Horton ad. That's what we heard.
Right, I remember. Yeah,
remember back with George Bush, the dad, Lee Atwater the partner of, God forbid, Roger Stone, Black, Manafort, Stone, and Kelly, who were advising George Bush, the dad, did an ad with an African-American, a criminal, who Michael Dukakis let out of prison. The guy looked mean and angry and dangerous, and that's what won the election for George Bush, the dad. Now, the rhetoric that came out of the RNC over the last few days is genuine. Okay, there is a crisis here. We're facing a counter-revolution. We're facing people who, and Black Lives Matter is exactly what Rudy Giuliani says it is and what I say it is. It's a black separatist group. It's racist in its own right. It's anti-Semitic. Anti-Christian for that matter. And it is not the group that's being portrayed. People are very naive out there. Okay. And that's who they're promoting on this march on Washington, particularly in Washington. It's painted in the street by the mayor, Muriel Bowser. And that's what we're up against. So it's education. But the Republicans talk a good game, but we haven't seen any real action so far. Your thoughts?
That's right. No, you're absolutely right. So it's unfortunate that a lot of us, we've just grown accustomed to being sheep. We listen to what the government tells us, or we listen to what groups tell us, and we follow without asking any questions. That's exactly what was being put forward with this Black Lives Matter movement. Nobody even asked, what is the agenda? Why is it that they only appear when a police officer shoots somebody who by the way, has all these nefarious activities going on, who's fighting with the police, resisting arrest, and then reaches inside of a car for a weapon by all accounts, which any police officer in this country would have shot him. But for whatever reason, that becomes a racist propaganda piece that these groups use to incite violence against police officers. Guys, we got to be smarter than that. The black community is not that naive. Trust me. We know what's going on. But the problem is when we have so-called leaders who we think are leaders, and these guys, they get in front of the audience and they tell us we're being victimized and the police are our victims. The police are the ones doing it to us. No. They don't live in the hood no more. They don't live in the community no more. They don't know what you're dealing with. I'm out here dealing with these people all the time. I'm in the community with the people. I come from the inner city, Larry. I know what it was like. And then, look, I tell everybody my story. The bottom line is I come from the hood. I come from the inner city. And you know what? I was one of these young activists back then. I was one of the people that said I didn't want the police in. We was as radical as we could be back in the day. But I always tell people, look, I was a great activist until I became a victim. I had to witness my own cousin get killed in front of me before I say, man, what's wrong with this? And the greatest thing I could have saw that day was a police officer that didn't look like me, by the way, show up and try to support my family. Man, I know it was the greatest loss that I could have ever went through in my life, Larry. But the reality of it was that was life-changing. Had that not happened, I would have never got out of the hood. I would have never went to the military. I would have never became a police officer so I could do that same thing for some other family. And right now, today, I would not be able to run for United States Congress. Listen, I don't know why these things happen in life. But what I do know is that we have to have the right people that have some level of understanding, some level of rationalization in being able to break down these scenarios for people to understand. And we simply don't have that coming from government right now.
No, we don't. And if we need education, we not only just need action. We obviously need action, but education. It's the white people in this country, not everybody, but they're cowards. They run away from this. They get down on their knees and they beg for forgiveness for things that happened hundreds of years ago. And now we see the NBA, the Major League Baseball, NFL, and even the PGA Tour getting down on their knees. And people are misinformed. And we see people wearing golf shoes like Cameron Champ, and I like Cameron Champ, by the way, but he's misinformed. He's wearing a white shoe and a black shoe, and the black shoe says Black Lives Matter on it, and he's playing in the tournament this week. I mean, he doesn't know what he's doing. And then you've got the NBA. They go out and boycott and walk off of the floor for the playoffs. You know what? Let them stay off the floor, okay? Let them not come back. Because on that floor is written Black Lives Matter. Then you got Major League Baseball, NFL, 2 national anthems, one for African Americans, one for everybody else. I mean, this kind of mentality is what put Hitler in power, what kept him in power. The major interests in Germany that went along with the flow. And that's what's happening right now. They're going along with the flow because they're frightened to death that they're going to lose people going to the stadiums and as fans. And they're throwing the towel in. And it's constant. You turn on the TV. Every 5 minutes, another ad effectively calling white people, generally speaking, racists. Okay, they're calling themselves racists.
And Larry, look, that's what we got to fight against. We got to fight against that kind of propaganda. You know what? I'm going to tell every white person in America. I'm going to tell every black person in America, every Asian, Hispanic in America, be proud of who you are. There's no reason for you to degrade yourself for anybody else. You shouldn't have to do that. I'm not going to tell anybody to do that. Matter of fact, I want you to be proud. If you white, I want you to be proud to be white. If you black, be proud to be black. I'm proud to be black. I can't be in any other race. I'm not going to try to be in another race. Now, there's a difference between individuals being ethnocentric. Being ethnocentric means that you think that your race is superior to somebody else. I'm not going to say do that. Because you know what comes with that type of ideology is that you do end up mistreating or being racist toward another group. But that's not to say that this propaganda that's being put forward by Black Lives Matter, that's not to say that they not racist. They're ethnocentric. That's racist. You gonna demean white people just for being white? Man, come on, man. That can't work, not in America.
Now the prevailing view that's taking hold is that white people are born with a gene where they're inherently racist. So when we come out of the womb, we're racists right away. So this is the problem here. We're all equal in this country, and we all need to treat each other with respect. But right now, there needs to be law enforcement. We have a case. You'll love this, Dimitri, and I want you to stay for the final verdict segment too. In Philadelphia, and you've been victimized by this as well. A group called the Plainview Project, which is probably financed by George Soros, the self-hating Jew who took property away from fellow Jews going to their death in gas chambers and ovens in Hitler's Germany, along with his father. This group broke into the social media accounts of police officers all over the country, in Philadelphia in particular, and the police chief, the mayor, and the district attorney elected with Soros's money fired 160 some of them. I represent some of those police, 8 of them. When I come back, we're going to talk more about that because I want people to understand what's going on here and the severity of it. We'll be right back with the verdict of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman.
Before he was a trial lawyer, he sliced him and diced him.
People used to ask me, Larry, what caused you to start Judicial Watch and now Freedom Watch, given the powerful forces in this country that put you at risk?
In a meat packing plant.
I'm the son of meat packers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
A very special prosecutor, Larry Klayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
This is the verdict, patriots, fellow Americans, those who actually have some courage, which are very limited this day, not like Dimitri, who's got amazing courage. You wouldn't believe his life was threatened, everything. And so was mine, when we brought those cases in Dallas. But what's going on in Philadelphia right now is discrimination against white male and other police. There was an African-American woman who recently tweeted a police officer that white people shouldn't bother wearing masks for COVID-19. They should wear their real masks, which are hoods of the Ku Klux Klan. Now, nothing happened to her, but my clients didn't even send out racist tweets or social media posts, but they were fired because they reposted or whatever what some others had written, and it wasn't even racist. But the mayor was up for re-election, Jim Kenney, the district attorney, Larry Krasner, who is a real vile individual elected with Soros's money, highly criticized by the U.S. Attorney in Philadelphia, and the police chief, Richard Ross, who now has been fired for sexual harassment, and the new one, if you love this one, Dimitri, Danielle Outlaw, you know all about her. She's from Portland, an African-American woman. They put her in there because they wanted an African-American woman, and she basically is just a placeholder. I sued them all for discrimination and other things. And you know what? They're running from the process server. Just last night, the process server went out because I sought to have them accept service. They wouldn't do that. And tried to serve Danielle Outlaw. Apparently, her daughter comes to the door when they find out it's a complaint. She's told by Danielle Outlaw, you could hear her screaming in the background, slam the door. Okay, this is the police chief of Philadelphia, doesn't obey service of process. So this is what you're dealing with. Tell us about your experience with the Plainview Project. We don't have a lot of time in this segment, but people need to understand what's going on here with the police.
Yes. Yeah. So basically, look, most people, they know that I am still police, okay? The bottom line is what this leftist group has done, right? They're going after police. So what they did was they hacked into social media's algorithm. I mean, it's their accounts. Like, they got into Facebook's accounts. And what they did was they tried to find anything that looked controversial, racist, or whatever, right? And then they reported it to the police department. So it happened to me. And all I did was I took an article that talked about Black Lives Matter, and I posted on my page, right, about it being a radical group, about my article, about me filing a lawsuit against them. And they used that, and they said they flagged it, and they gave it to the department. Now, I had to go through the whole process, the internal affairs investigation, all that, and say, look, this is free press. These guys have a right to have this material up. Now, the problem with this is you have a group that violated these individuals' Fourth Amendment right to search and seizure. First of all, they hacked into the Facebook platforms and conducted an illegal search and then gave it to the law enforcement agency. As opposed to the law enforcement, and this is by the way, Larry, I know you're the attorney, but in a court of law, this would be called the fruits of a poisonous tree, right? I know it is, right, because I've been through it. But basically, what the agency did, rather than taking an opportunity to say, hey, give these officers, hey, go ahead and clean up the page. This doesn't look right. The Plainview Project did this illegal search. They posted it online, and they're labeling us. They're labeling you as racist, and you being a part of this police department. It's a bad PR nightmare. Go ahead and remove it, take it down. Rather than them doing that, they decided to fire these police officers. Man, look, I think these officers have a great case. I think they have a great case for, number one, they were going off of information that was not authenticated. We don't know who has control over any individual's Facebook page. All these Facebook pages, everybody got about 4 different pages. I don't even manage half my pages. And at the end of the day, we know that these officers were terminated because of something that was on their page that was illegally obtained. And, Larry, we cannot allow that to happen in the United States.
You're right, Dimitri. We only have about 30 seconds here, and I want to have you back because we're going to do a whole show together. But this is why we need to rise up. The American people need to rise up. This was done for political purposes. I'd like people to go out and buy my book, It Takes a Revolution. Forget the scandal industry. It's on pre-order on Amazon, on Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, all the booksellers. I have solutions. You have solutions. We're working together, brother. And we will get the job done for the American people with God's grace. So that's the verdict today. Thank you for listening to Dimitri Penny and I and Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. God bless you. Stay safe. We'll be back next week with another edition of this radio show. Thank you for listening to me.